So we're really lucky today. This is my friend Steve Tingiris. We've known each other for a long time. Somebody asked me like, how long? I'm like, I don't know. Like a long time. Probably longer than, a lot, no, not that long. But I won't say longer than you guys have been alive because it hasn't been quite that long. But Steve has had multiple companies. If you read his bio and stuff, you'll see that, is this 3 or 4?
This is 4 that I'm working on.
Okay, so it's like, is it 3 or 4? But he really has kind of started in marketing and automation, but he's been a developer forever. So he certainly is a full stack software developer from that perspective, but he's sort of specialized in the last few years, doing a lot of things with AI and some different skills with IoT. So I'm not going to try to tell you everything that Steve does because I don't have that long, but I'll let Steve continue from there. But we're really fortunate to have him, and so he didn't prepare a presentation. He's going to answer whatever questions you have, but I think for those of you who are trying to go from idea to product, I probably could not have brought you a better person to have that conversation with.
Well, thank you, Joy. Yeah, I don't have a presentation. I don't have an outline. I'll tell you a little bit about what I've done and then try to roll that into some questions about what you're doing, and then we can kind of riff from there. Does that work? All right. Like Joy said, I think sometimes about like what it is that I do, and I was talking with somebody recently, and they were telling me about a Malcolm Gladwell book, The Tipping Point, that I had not read, but he was saying that Malcolm Gladwell says in The Tipping Point that to become an expert on anything, you have to spend 10,000 hours on it, which if you think about work weeks, I think that breaks down to like 5 years. So I was thinking like, what have I spent 5 years concentrating on? What one thing? And the answer is nothing. But I've spent a lot of time on a lot of different things. And I in my head, it's like, I think the one thing that maybe I could say yes to is I spent a lot of time thinking about how to get out of work. And that's probably my one thing. And a lot of that just naturally leads me to automation. So I'm part engineer, part entrepreneur, part tinkerer, dabbler. The company that I run right now is called Dabble Lab, and it was sort of born out of other things that I did, but I've done a lot of different things. I did work for NASA. I delivered pizzas 3 weeks before I got that job. I've worked in an auto repair place. I've coded. I've mowed lawns. I've done lots of different things. But mostly what goes on in my head is, as I'm looking around, is how do I do this with less work? It's an idea that is not my idea, certainly, but the term that I heard, ephemeralization, which is the idea of doing more with less. And I see it everywhere now. And being a little bit older than most of you, I've kind of seen some patterns, especially in the technology space, that are recurring. And I'll tell you a story. The first time I ever did a talk, it was in 1995. And I was maybe around your age, but I had never done a talk before. And somebody asked me to do a talk about the World Wide Web. And it's really hard to think back to that time because at the time, most people had no idea what it was. It's really, some people had not even heard the term. And so I was really nervous, and I spent probably 2 weeks preparing for this presentation. And I wrote out every single line. I went to the place that I was talking beforehand to make sure that there was a phone jack, because my plan was I was gonna show everybody how it worked like that. Everybody will love it if they see it. That was what I had going on in my head. And so there was this electronics store back then called Radio Shack. And I went in there and I bought this really long telephone cord that would wrap around this room just to make sure that I had enough room. I didn't have a laptop at the time, so I boxed up my computer, and the monitors, these little ones here, back then they were big. You had to, they were big. And I went in early and I set this whole thing up. It was a complete fail. It was so bad. Nothing worked. There was modems back then, and you had to have a telephone number to call to connect to a server that would then connect you to the internet. And on the modem, you had to have, they were called, there was baud rates, which is like speeds, and there was like these little switches that you had to like flip to make sure that the modem was the same speed as the modem that you were calling. I couldn't get any of this stuff working. And when the presentation was done, one of the guys that was in there who was clearly aware of my distress after this complete fail of a presentation came up and said, he said, don't worry about it. You actually made me feel a lot better. My thinking is, if you can't figure it out and you do it all the time, I don't even need to worry about it. And I was like, oh gosh. Like the whole point of this thing was to show them where the future was going. And I think for most of the people in the audience, I did exactly the opposite. They're like, this is never happening. And I think back to that and sort of what's happened since then. And as I was building my first company, which helped businesses get on the internet. So that was everything from like physically connecting to the internet to setting up websites and stuff like that. And some of the early objections that at the time seemed like such bad things, like nobody's gonna ever enter a credit card in a website. That's just way too scary. Like somebody could just steal everything. And now I go into Starbucks and pay with my watch, and everybody else does too. I don't even know how it works. Like somebody's taking my money somehow, somewhere, but I'm sure it's good. And back then, it seemed like the biggest obstacle. Like, could you imagine like everybody getting to a place where they were comfortable just putting their stuff on the internet, like this really scary place? And now a lot of what I am involved in is so like voice automation and blockchain and AI. And I hear some similar things today. I hear people say like, oh, like there's a microphone in my living room listening to stuff like, like that's never gonna happen. Or cryptocurrency, like why would anybody ever, think to do that, or blockchain, all these things. And to me, it seems like just the same thing. And in my head, I'm going, give it a couple of years and you'll do it too. It's just like, if it makes our lives better, we're gonna do it. We're definitely gonna do it. All things being equal, we all want to live a more comfortable life. And we are going to naturally move in that direction. And so what, kind of back to my first point, is what I spend most of my time doing is thinking about how can I make my life easier or other people's lives easier, because that's fundamentally what we want. Because if our life is easier, and when I say I'm trying to get out of work, I guess I should define what I consider work. For me, work is anything that I have to do that I don't prefer to do, that I don't want to do. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm trying to get out of things that would create an income for me or anything. But if I don't like doing it, I try to think of ways to not do it. And even as I was driving over here and thinking, I didn't spend any time preparing a presentation for the group. And I think back to my earlier, I would stress out about that so much if I came to talk and I hadn't spent any time preparing for it, that I sort of swung in the other direction at a certain point where I said, I'm just gonna say no. Like, that's the best way to do it. Then I don't have to spend that time because it's such a big obligation. And now I'm like, what's the shortest path there? Just show up, say something. If nobody likes it, that's okay. But that's, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in what I was thinking, sort of really high level, that we could talk about together. If you're working on a startup, a new venture, something that I understand all of you are interested in, some of you are working on, there's a lot to do. We had a quick conversation about just the challenges that are involved with working on your business versus working in your business. But if you do get a chance to zoom out, the other thing that you'll realize as you get into it more is, like, not everything that you do is worth the same thing. If you took everything that you could do, you could sort of bucket it into like one of four areas. There's stuff that you have to do and you have to do it right now. It's like, they're fires. You're going to lose a big account if you don't get this done immediately. Those things you just have to do. And then there's stuff that kind of feels like that, but if you didn't do it, nothing would happen. This could be, I don't know, like somebody showing up and going, I got this idea, and like everything stops and everybody's like at the whiteboard, I got this idea that's, there's dopamine going and everybody's like, it's awesome. And then, 2 weeks later, nobody remembers that meeting. But at the time, it was like the meeting and everybody was there and everybody had to be part of it. This is stuff that is urgent, but if you didn't do it, there would be very little consequences. But at the time, it feels like the most important thing. And then there's things that are kind of the opposite of that. It's like you don't think about them day to day, and you don't have to think about them day to day. But if you continue to not think about them over some period of time, you're going to wish you had been thinking about them and doing them day to day. And these are things that are more like, I don't know, like in our personal lives, maybe putting money away for the future. Like if you don't do it today, you're probably not going to feel an effect tomorrow. But if you don't do it for the next 15 years, 20 years, and I'm just picking one, but there's a lot of examples of these kinds of things, which they're not super urgent, like they don't feel like something that you have to do right now, but they are important, so you've got to figure them in. And then there's, I like to play video games, and I would kind of classify that as neither, like kind of, maybe I could rationalize and say it's like mental health time, but where it's not really important, and it's not, sometimes it feels urgent, but it's just kind of like entertainment. Entertainment's important for keeping your health, but like sort of not important, but also not necessarily something that you feel like you have to do right now. It's sort of like passive. So everything that you do can fall into one of those buckets. But generally, you're trying to, I think, move toward doing those things that are going to free up future time. So, and this is where the idea of ephemeralization comes in. It's like the things that I do today are, especially if they're work, if they're things I don't want to do, are things that I expect will buy me time in the future. And that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm just trying to claw back as much future time as I can. Because the more you do that, the more options you have, either personally or in your company, for navigating toward those things that are important, or just giving you the flexibility and the latitude to think straight, so you're not like running around with like your hair on fire all the time. So I wanted to find out what you're all doing, and you can do this because this is a small group. And maybe just like a sentence or two about like what you're working on, what you're interested in.
I'm a cybersecurity student at UT. I'm finishing my bachelor's in May, and then I'm planning to do the master's. But project-wise, my plan is to work on, I'm doing an honors project for it. It's like a home network scanner, where essentially it'll go through, it's like Nmap, but it's for the general user, a non-technical person. Where they can scan something and see, hey, here's what's on your network, here's what's vulnerable, here's what you can do to fix it.
Okay, and I'm going to ask the same question to everybody as we go around and do this. That was a great intro, and thank you. If you could only finish one thing this week, what is the most important thing that you would want to finish?
I would probably want to have a rudimentary prototype of the actual project ready to go, because I do need to send a deliverable to my professor. Okay. So just having a rudimentary function of it working.
I'm a double major in entrepreneurship and accounting.
Okay.
And actually biology minor. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm working on video ideas. They're vlogs.
Okay.
So comedy and action vlogs that display the entrepreneur's life. Comedy vlogs are meant to market the entrepreneur, and then action vlogs are meant to inspire entrepreneurs to be the best entrepreneurs they can be.
I love it. What if you could finish one thing this week? What is it?
I'm working on a lot of videos, so I would like to finish the action speaker series vlog I'm trying to work on, posted tomorrow's Friday? It's on Friday. I don't think I'm gonna get done by Friday, but hopefully tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
My one thing?
Yeah.
Probably finding our manufacturer, just have everything set, have the product on its way.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Yeah. Now, it's your turn.
That's what I've been working on this week. Yeah,
If you
but the
could-
manufacturer thing, we've been doing a lot of calls, I've been doing like tons of calls this week and emailing people, and so
Okay.
it's just been a constant grind.
Hi everyone, my name is Akshay. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Kitchenery. We develop intelligent countertop solutions that sends cordless power to appliances placed on top of it. So holistically improving the use of kitchen space in the consumer home. And the one thing that I am working on that I want to achieve by the end of this week is to submit a product mission proposal to one of the companies that I've been building relationships since the past 2 years.
I'm Matthew. I'm an incubator here, and my company is Titan Equity. We're a real estate company that sources vacant lots for building companies. I was going to say something different for what I wanted to accomplish this week. I was originally going to say I wanted to finish building out a campaign for my texting software with associated triggers, but I want to change my answer. I want to review my Q1 performance and results and then plan for Q2.
So most of what I have arrived at in terms of what I believe is that doing anything is just about getting the right things done in the shortest period of time and in the right order. And so planning almost doesn't, planning almost doesn't matter because you don't know what's in front of you. Like you can kind of sort of set a general direction, but as new opportunities present themselves, as new information becomes available that wasn't available, your land space and options is going to change. So what I try to do is work with a single question that I ask myself every single day, and that is if I could only finish one thing today, what is the one thing that is the most valuable thing that I could do, or the most meaningful thing I could do, or just what is one thing? And I got this from some people that I was so fortunate to have the opportunity to work with early on in my career. They had a saying that went 3 by 3, nor by 4, thrive by 5. And basically what the backstory to the saying was is if you could take care of the 3 most important things that needed to get done in your life, you would probably be pretty well off. If you could take care of the top 4, you'd have more than most, and you'd thrive if you could take care of the top 5. The trick is not just doing things, it's doing the right things at the right time. And you don't always know exactly what they are, but you can get a lot closer by just asking, if I could only do one thing, what is the one thing? And being clear about the difference between goals and objectives. Goals are things that you'd like to have. Objectives are things that you can do that will hopefully lead you to those goals. So in business, when I'm talking with some of our team leads, when they're setting goals, maybe a goal is I'd like to hit X in sales. That's a goal that you don't have direct control over, which is different than we're going to do these specific things to hopefully put us in a position to have that goal. So when you're talking about if you could only do one thing, what is the most important thing? You want to be as clear as you possibly can. So if there was some really clear ones, it's I've got to get this assignment done by this time. Then you can start breaking those down. If you're really clear and objective on what the outcome is, you can start breaking it down into pieces that make everything so much more manageable. So if you go, I've got to turn this assignment in by this time, then you can say, I'm going to break that down into, if that assignment's due Friday, and I ask the question, if there was only one thing that I could do today, what is the one thing that's the most important thing? I'm thinking about my future goals. I'm thinking about this assignment that's got to be done by Friday, but I'm deciding on what I need to do today in the context of that framework. So today it might be, I'm going to spend 3 hours, and again, objective, working on that assignment. And that is generally like the framework that I follow and I think works really well, especially in the startup stage when you don't necessarily know what needs to be done exactly, and there's always more to do than there is going to be time to do it. You will get wrapped around the axle. You ever hear that term? I don't know where, but you'll get priority paralysis. There will be too many things going on. You just got to stop and go, all right, what is one thing that I need to get done? And then the next thing, the next thing. And as you're doing that, get better at figuring out priority. And that's the idea behind, if I could only do one thing, what is the one thing that represents the most important thing, the most valuable thing? And then expand out on that. You can set a goal out 5 years and break that down so that every single day you know what your top 3 are, your top 5 are, and everybody else in your organization, everybody else that you're working with should be able to do that too. Otherwise, it just becomes really, really difficult to at least it does for me, to get anything done, because I can be so scattered that if I don't have at least in 3x3, 4x4, 5x5, I'm just struggling every day with one. Like, I just want to do one thing that is gonna be meaningful, one thing that's going to hopefully put me in a position where I can do more down the road. So
Steve, don't you think that from an entrepreneur standpoint, right, as being the CEO, it's really important that you do that, because if you don't have that focus as the leader, then when you're talking about getting wrapped around the axle, no one on the team knows what to do, right? So they don't have a clear set of priorities either.
That's right.
So if you've got that clear, like, hey, we want to do this one thing, and there's other pieces, great, everybody can take their piece and go do it. But if there's not clarity from the leadership, then it becomes problematic.
For sure, 100%. And understanding their goals within the context of the organizational goals becomes really, really important as well. I had a great mentor, still a very good friend of mine, Marty, Marty. And early on in my career, he said, we were having like a coaching session, and I was like telling him about a meeting that I had with our team. And I sort of rolled down through all of the things that I thought each person could do to improve. Like, this person's not doing that right, this person's not doing that right. And I was kind of hyper-focused on the things that I thought that they were doing wrong. And his comment to me, which was really, really valuable, and I still think about it today, was he said, if you spend as much time figuring out what they do right as you've spent figuring out what they do wrong, you'd be in a much better place. Because when you understand what people do well and what they're focused on, then you can align that with the things that you're trying to do for the organization. But you just figured out all of the things that can't help you because they don't do them well, or they don't want to do them well, or whatever. And so this also can become a really good tool for management when you're working with individual people, just asking that question. If you could only do one thing, if you could only finish one thing this week, what would it be? Like in the case of my company now, we're still small, we're just 25 people, but I don't know what everybody's doing, and I don't really want to know what everybody's doing because they're doing a lot of stuff that is way beyond what I could know. So I will often, if I'm talking with somebody and trying to get a sense of where they are, especially if I feel like they're struggling or if they've come to me, ask that question. What is the one thing this week, and they know this because I've asked this to everybody, if there was one thing that, what's the one thing this week that represents the most important thing that you could be doing? And the only thing that I expect is that everybody has an answer. I don't know whether or not it's the right answer, but I do trust that if they're asking that question, sure, some weeks they'll pick the wrong thing, but if they're asking that question all the time, they're gonna get better at picking the right thing. And if they're asking that question amongst their peers and in their team meetings, then everybody in that team is going to start getting better at aligning what they're doing and really focusing on what they believe is the most important thing. And at a minimum, even if you pick the wrong things, it feels good to finish stuff. It feels good to finish stuff. And it gives you confidence, it gives you momentum, and it moves you forward. That was the general message that I had thought as I was coming here, is that prioritizing what you do is really, really important. At every level, what you're spending your time on, which opportunities you're going after, which investors that you want to spend time with. There's always going to be too much to do and not enough time to do it. So the better you get at picking one thing, the more time you can spend relaxing too. I mean, it's that was my early motivations. I just don't really like working all the time. And so if I can figure out how to do the one thing that represents the thing that will create the majority of the results, then you can focus on that. Anybody ever have a week where they feel like they just didn't get as much done as they would have liked to? Does anybody have an approach that you use personally? How do you plan your week?
I recently started doing this on Sundays. I'll have a meeting with myself. Usually it's at 3 p.m., but I'll try and block time out. And I honestly have been terrible at that this week. Just kind of disregarding my time blocks. But that's generally what I do. I've been
Why do you disregard your time blocks?
just this week I kind of have. I've
Oh,
just
okay.
been getting caught up in other things, kind of not spending my time as effectively as possible.
Why? Is it because there's fires that are coming up that you didn't plan for, or is it that maybe why do you think that happens? Just curious.
Well, I recently fired 2 VAs that I was working with, so I'm picking up extra work, which is fine. I'm just kind of readjusting.
Okay.
But I'm managing other aspects of the business now that I wasn't before. Just outbound messaging, our SMS marketing. I'm picking that up. So maybe it's some of that. But yeah, just kind of I don't know. I don't know.
Are you okay with me asking a few questions about
Yeah,
this?
definitely.
What is the one thing within your company that represents the most important thing in your opinion?
Doing deals. So I would say probably reaching out to motivated sellers, marketing.
I don't know what the math is in your case, but to illustrate a point, if you've got to talk to, or if your goal is to talk to 25 people,
So I don't know.
each of those steps is going to require an investment of time probably. So what you also want to do, and I'm not meaning to pick on your business because this applies to all of our businesses, is figure out if our goals can be achieved with the resources that we have to put into them. So I'm going to do a make-up scenario. So let's say that our goal is to get 10 new customers. And to get 10 new customers, we have to talk to 25 prospects. That means that we need to talk to 250 prospects to get 10 new customers, right? So now we need to say, okay, if we need to talk to 250 prospects, and each conversation takes an hour, that's 250 hours. And if we're talking about doing that in a month, there's 160 hours in a month if you're working full time as one person. So to reach that goal, if you're one person, you need to work really hard and you can't do anything else. No sleeping, no thinking, no relaxing, if those are actually the numbers. And so that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to understand how it all breaks down. What is it that you actually need to do? And this is going to be helpful in recognizing and prioritizing what really is possible and what's doable. I spent some time as an investor, also not 10,000 hours, but with an investment group. And the thing that I used to recognize is how often the numbers just wouldn't add up. It just, and things like a really common one, we're raising $5 million. Great. Tell me about the business that you're working on. Well, we're doing X, Y, Z, and it's great business, and there's tons of potential customers out there. And you go, okay, how many potential customers? there's 10,000, potential customers. And how much will each customer spend with you? They'll spend $1,000, or $2,000, or whatever. I can quickly do the math and go, you're raising $5 million for a $100 million opportunity or $50 million opportunity. That just doesn't work. Like that's just nobody. That's just not going to work. That's not it's not enough of an opportunity to justify the input, the risk. Input doesn't just need to be money. Input is time also. So in addition to figuring out like, is it even possible? Like in the scenario where we've got to do 250 hours worth of work to get our goal in a month, and there's really only 160 hours. Maybe you are a harder worker and you could do 250 hours, but you won't do 250 hours on that activity because there's other stuff to do. But anyway, even in cases where the numbers add up, then it's just like, do they make sense? Is that even what you want to do? Because for every opportunity, there's also an opportunity cost. And in investing, this is really easy to illustrate. You could take, if you were an investor, you could take $1 million and put it into investment A. That would eliminate that $1 million being in investment B. Investment A could make you money, but investment B maybe could have made you 5 times what investment A made. So in that case, it's not just about the opportunity, but it's about the opportunity cost. The same is true with time. So you can spend time finding a new vendor for the cloth for the hammocks, and or finding, is that a manufacturer? You want to make sure that that is the most valuable use of your time, because that's the one thing that you can't spend twice. You can't get yesterday back tomorrow and redo it. And so you want to take the time to think through, like, if I could only do one thing, what is the one thing? And in the case of the hammocks, what is the one thing that changes everything? And I'll tell you one other story. My first business, we were really busy. We at the time that this story takes place, I think we had roughly 40 people, and we were super busy and making money, but struggling still. Like it wasn't happening in a fluid way. It was just kind of happening, and we were working with a lot of smaller, medium-sized businesses, and we got an opportunity to do a project for Microsoft, and the project was a $2.5 million project. For us at the time was huge, and we thought we had no chance of getting this project the day before we got it, and the day after, everything had changed because of this one deal. And as I was reflecting on that afterwards, I'm like, it didn't take us any more time. It didn't take us any more effort. It didn't take us any more anything. It was just a much bigger opportunity. And the day before, the challenge was like, how do we get this next little prospect to add to our kind of group of people that were keeping the doors open? And the day after, our challenge was, how do we deliver on this? This is huge. Like, we don't have enough people. We don't have enough time. We need to and the answer, ironically, was we had to let go a bunch of our other clients to make this other one happen. And what I realized in this whole experience is that we had been doing everything wrong. Like, we were going after the wrong clients. That was the problem. It wasn't that we weren't committed, that we weren't working hard, that we weren't giving it our all. We were on all fronts, just in the wrong place. And so all of these things kind of are interrelated and important as you're spending your time, not constantly, at least periodically questioning, is this the most important thing I could be doing? Is this the most valuable thing I could be doing? And talking to other people and having a peer group that can give you feedback in a very candid and direct way without you feeling like insulted or questioned. I don't know. That's another thing I feel very fortunate for. I had a peer group that was pretty direct, and they would call me out. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you're being an idiot. Like, this doesn't make any sense. You're spending all your time in this area. That's never gonna work. And in some cases, I would just say, well, that's your opinion. But in other cases, they were right. You know, they just were seeing it without like the emotion involved that maybe I had in some cases.
I have a lot of projects that I'm working on that I don't know how. I stretch myself really thin. So I have 3 video ideas, and I have this podcast, and I have all this stuff for class. Like I'm her feasibility analysis we have to do. So I have a lot of work, and I don't know which is the most important to me, because I don't know. It's hard to pick which idea I want to do now, and then stick with that. So I want to do everything at once, which is kind of hard.
What's hard about picking one? I wonder. What do you think the challenge is there?
Because I guess the challenge for me, right, is that it's going to take a long time to finish this. So I want to like work on multiple things at once to get them done at the same time, kind of. So I guess that's my problem. Where like
it's not a problem. I'm just
yeah.
There's no right or wrong answers. I'm just trying to understand. Like, what do you think you said it was a problem, or you said that's my problem now. Like, why do you think it's a problem?
I guess I don't want to stay, because the editing of this one video is going to take me like all day today and all day tomorrow, basically, to get it done by tomorrow.
Okay.
And I guess I don't want to spend the whole time just on that one video. I want to work on the other video also. So I guess I don't know why. I guess I'm like bored. Like,
which of those is the most valuable thing? If you could only do one of them, what is the one that you ought to do first?
I guess the one I'm working on right now. So so it's like the action blog I'm working on. So I guess that one I should just focus on that and not. Okay. Yeah. I guess you answered my question.
Oh, I didn't answer your question. I don't know. Another way you could go at it, if you didn't do that blog video, what would the consequences be 5 years from now?
If I keep doing them every week, it could lead me to such great success in 5 years. If that's
okay.
If I don't do them, then I'll be at the same place I am at right now.
How much would you invest in that in time? And where would it get you? And if you're really convinced that that's where you want to be, then it's really easy to do that. You know, like do it every single week and block the time. And don't let. If you're not convinced, spend some time. Or what I would do is spend some time thinking about like, what are my options? And why. I published a book last year for Pack Publishing that was a really big mistake. I kind of got not sucked into it. I did it willingly, but I didn't take my own advice. Like, I didn't think through like, why am I doing this? I was really interested in the topic, but it was a huge time commitment, much more so than I imagined. And the cost of it, reflecting back now, I wouldn't do it if I had thought it through. And that's generally what you're always trying to do, is like, what are you investing, and what are you getting out of it? And I don't mean money, but really knowing, like, this is something that's meaningful to me. Whether there's money coming out of it or not, I'm going to prioritize it because I want to spend my time on it. But understanding that, I think, it is helpful. Like, what is it that's driving you to do this? Why do you want to do it? And where are you hoping that it'll take you?
I do have about 25 papers I have to read and grade. That's something I definitely have to. She's my student too.
Okay.
That I have to get done. Business side though, I used to work with nonprofits as partnerships, and I would use their facilities to host our education experiences. So it'd be great to either find a new location soon. I've had some conversations on maybe where I could host another boot camp for entrepreneurship, and or solidify a better process of the learning experience. So those are some things I've been working on and could get done soon.
My last company I sold was a company called Prospect Smarter, and I was a technology guy. They got in a position where I had to find customers, And I just don't enjoy cold calling. I hate it. Like that's just, I don't want to do it. And some people are great at it. They really thrive from it. I don't want to talk to anybody that doesn't want to talk to me. That's my personal opinion. So I thought, like, there must be a way that you could do this smarter. Like, rather than like everybody else was just, send as many messages out and sort of like spray and pray, and hopefully you get one. So the whole idea behind Prospect Smarter was to do the reverse. How do you talk to fewer people that are more qualified and want to talk with you? Because then then it's not a sales conversation. You can just, talk and figure it out. But it was driven like selfishly by like, I just don't want to do this. Like I don't want to do this. It's not fun. Yeah.
How did you find fewer people who were more qualified that wanted to talk to you?
Yeah, good question. So there's always in markets, there's some version of the 80-20 rule where there's going to be a spending distribution that is something like 10% of the market spends 90% or creates 90% of the sales. So in your case with you're targeting developers, if you took 10,000 developers and you were able to get how much they had spent in the previous 10 years buying land, a minority of them would likely have spent the majority if you look at it all as a market. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They're not all created equally. Like that's, so in this, I learned from the Microsoft thing that I told you about because that happened previously. It occurred to me that it's like, wait, this is one customer that can spend 1,000 times more than those 50 other customers combined. And so that was sort of what led into Prospect Smarter. It's like, it's not about getting in front of more people, it's about getting in front of fewer prospects that are more qualified, that are bigger spenders. So so basically we built a system to aggregate data so that we could understand more clearly if we could only pick 100 people to market to out of this market of 10,000, who would the top 100 be? And so it was a data platform that started there, understanding who the top 100 of a market of 10,000 or 50,000 or 100,000. And you, rather than, if you spent, like on a marketing budget, if there was a market, your audience was 10,000. If you spent $1 to send a communication to each of those 10,000, you'd spend $10,000, right? Yeah, simple math. But what if you spent $10,000 marketing to 100 of them? What would happen? You'd send them a lot more communications over a longer period of time, which means your marketing is more likely to get noticed, over a period of time. And if it's more likely to get noticed with a group that's more likely to spend more, then your odds of it paying off are greater. And so that's basically that was the basic concept. I'm working on another side project. I love to travel, and we have a team that's remote. And so for the past couple of years, I've been a few months here in Tampa and the rest of the year someplace else. And as I travel, I try to go to areas where I can meet up with some of the people on our team. And but as I had been to some areas, like I was 3 months in Lisbon in Portugal, and I just loved it there. And so we just kept having people come in. And then we started brainstorming, like, we should set this up, like, just like buy places around the world and make them like our offices / we can just like go there and work and move on to the other one. And so I started talking, one of our larger clients is a large real estate developer, really financial mortgage company, but talking to them about the idea, and it spun into this, in the early days of hiring technical talent, Microsoft and Google, they had these like fabulous campuses, that were designed to attract the best talent. But nowadays, at least in the case of, we hire engineers that are all saying like, I don't want to go to one of those campuses at all. Like nobody wants that anymore. It's just changed. But a lot of them are traveling. Like a lot of them, spend, a few months in Turkey or a few months wherever. They're mobile, and really with the kind of work that we do, the only requirement is good internet and power. Working on your business is figuring out the strategy, figuring out the systems, figuring out the direction, figuring out what's going to make it grow. Working in your business is doing the work, like writing the code, doing the things that make run the business. My goal is to where I don't have to work, because it's really not a company. Or my definition is, it's not a company if the position is if I stop, it stops. That's a job. Even if you have employees, that's not really a company yet. You want to get it to the point where you don't have to work. And so you're thinking of that, and not because you don't want to work, but that is the goal, to be clear. And that's the goal so that your employees, if you have employees, have security. If you win the lottery and go, I'm not doing this, or something worse, you want to know that it'll continue even when you're gone. If you ever want to sell it or just get sick of it, you need to make sure that you set it up in a way that it is its own thing. And so I think the balance of working on versus working in is what needs to happen on your way to that point. At that point where you can walk away and come back a year later and it's better off possibly than where it was when you left, you're not there. Like until you know that you can, and that's so many different things. It's systems, it's focus, it's strategy, it's people, it's culture, there's so many things. And so, but thinking about all of those things and how to navigate and orchestrate toward that end, which is that point where it is its own thing that will work independently of you or whoever the key people are. Well, in GPT-3, my main interest in GPT-3 was CodeX, which is a AI model for writing code. So if you're familiar with GitHub Copilot, have you looked at this, used this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, definitely need to go sign up for it, the beta. But a lot of the code that I would write by hand is now being written by AI. And so I use Copilot and CodeX quite a bit. And for the same reasons, I love writing code and figuring out problems, but not the boring stuff. There's a ton of just boilerplate, writing unit tests and stuff like that. So I'm always trying to figure out how I can do more with less, ephemeralization. What tools can I use that are going to make me more productive? Force multipliers or the different terms, but levers. The things that today 10 people could build a company that 20 years ago would have taken 100 people, if not more. And I believe 10 years from now, there will be billion-dollar companies of one. And that's because of technology and leverage. And that is gonna happen for sure. And it's gonna be because of these tools. Well, there's a local company here that because I met Michael Rourke at the bar camp years ago. But Pocket Network, that's a blockchain that I think is a good example of what is possible with a small team that makes the right calculated moves, and they've scaled valuation over $1 billion with a team that's not 10 people. I don't think at the core.
It's about 10, I think now, but that's it. So it's which is very unusual.
That's another thing that's changing too, is
The ICOs and stuff. Yeah.
Not DAOs, distributed autonomous organizations. There's more structures that are different than corporate structures that are, I think, really interesting. We did a project for a blockchain company. Well, we did this one for Pocket years ago, but another one where they paid us in their token, not US dollars, and then the value of the token went up a lot. And it's just a different way of doing business, and everybody is sort of incentivized to make it work, not just the people behind it. So it's it's an interesting way of aligning the people that are doing the work. Not that hiring somebody means that they're not going to be genuinely interested in doing a good job for you. But there is something to getting paid in whatever is also going to incentivize the entire organization or ecosystem. We had one guy that was on our team that's unfortunately not anymore, but the reason he's not as good is like he started working on an arbitrage bot on the side that he was just doing on his own. And he, as a few years ago, he came to me. He said, "Hey, I'm give you my time. I'm going down my own path." And I said, "What are you working on?" And he told me, and I said, "How well is it doing?" He goes, "Well," how did he say it? He goes, "Well, it's generated more than you've paid me in the last 4 years." So last week. Yeah,
Last week, okay.
Yeah. So I was like, fair enough. There's some back of the napkin math that you should do.
Yeah.
You should always do. You should always understand or at least guess at what you think the average value of a customer is. And I think you do that for the first year. Because if it's more in future years, that's fine. But first year is going to make or break you. The second thing is how many of them are out there. And that's your addressable market. Your addressable market is the percentage of the market that you could realistically address, which brings up the third thing. How much would it cost you to get one customer? So doing the math, if there's 1,200 customers and they're worth 1,000 each, that's a market of 1.2 million. If it costs you, say, $500 to access each one, you need to invest $600,000 for an opportunity to earn 1.2. Do you take that? Don't take it. Don't take it. Don't take it. No, don't take it. It's too big an investment.
Yeah,
for
it's too
them.
big of an,
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
And that's basically what you're trying to do. It's like you want to start with a gut check, and like if you could go get a 200% return just buying some cryptocurrency, which you can, without doing any work, you're still taking the risk, but you're not doing any of the work, and you have the same potential upside.
That makes sense.
So you just kind of want to make sure before you dive into anything that you're not just taken in by like the generalities of the idea, and also that you're considering, like we talked about earlier, not just the opportunity, but the opportunity cost.
Yeah.
That same time, energy, and capital could possibly be put somewhere else and make more with less time, energy.